Welcome to the Ardan Labs podcast. Our special guest today is Richard White. Hey, Richard, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, give everybody what I call the 2-minute spiel on what you're doing today. Just focus on what you're working on today.
Yeah, so for the last 4 years, I've been founder and CEO of a product called Fathom. It's Fathom.video on the internet. It's a AI note taker. So for folks that are on video meetings like Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, we have a free product that joins your meeting, records it, transcribes it, and writes notes for you. Allows you to pull out clips, share them with colleagues. Basically just makes it a lot less stressful to have a meeting because you don't have to worry about forgetting something. So been doing that again since about 2020. So we get a little ahead of the AI curve. We kind of saw that one coming, kind of built Fathom for the coming kind of AI revolution. We've raised a good bit of money at this point, and things are going pretty well. I'm pretty happy. We've won a lot of awards. I've got one behind me here on G2. We're like the highest satisfaction product on G2 for AI note takers. Same thing at the HubSpot marketplace, the Zoom marketplace. So just having a lot of fun.
So when you say that it's being driven by AI, and look, this is really a podcast about you and your journey and sort of how you got to where you are today with Fathom. But there's just a few questions I want to ask before we sort of jump in that time machine, because this is where I always get confused. And I'm a software developer by trade. I'm playing with all this tech myself.
Same here.
Just as a heads up. But when you say it's sort of AI driven, can you go a little deeper? Are these sort of AI models you're using to help with these transcriptions? Are there traditional algorithms, things like that?
Yeah. So when we started the company, we actually had two hypotheses. One was we thought AI was going to get really good, and by that we meant kind of just like off the shelf large language models. We knew we didn't want to build language models ourselves. I kind of knew how much companies like OpenAI were dumping into like model development. We actually had a lot of competitors that were hiring linguists and ML engineers and trying to build out their own models, and we're like, we don't really believe that's the path. We actually believe you can just use off the shelf models from the big providers. That was
let them spend $100 million, right?
Exactly.
On training these things.
Yeah. And so that was one of our big theses. It was like, okay, it was 2020. Obviously, AI in 2020 actually had a bad rep. I remember investors of ours, like when we put AI in our product name, we're like, don't do that. People don't like AI products. It's kind of hard to remember this, but like the first wave of AI products that kind of started around 2015 were pretty mediocre in their execution. And this was everyone kind of making their own models and stuff like that. But we had strong conviction that like, no, we think that's like the first version. It's not very good, but we think there's a better version coming. And so we kind of built the company assuming that was going to happen. And so we built out a really robust product that made it really easy to record and transcribe a meeting and get a transcript as soon as the call ended. Knowing that people don't want a transcript, but we knew you need a transcript to do all the fun stuff with large language models in the future. And so starting about 2023, but really kind of late 2023 is when the LLMs got to a point really around Claude 2 or GPT-4, where the AI was now good enough that it could take a transcript and write better notes about a meeting than almost any person I know, sort of thing. And so that's when we got to add that into the product and went from being, I think, a really good product to being a great product.
One thing I saw recently, and I cannot remember the name of the company, but they're taking, and this isn't real time, right? Like, so it's not real time, but they're taking videos now and they're translating them into different languages and getting your mouth to move appropriately. It's crazy, dude. It's awesome, actually.
The stuff on the frontier, especially when it's like real time, like video generation or manipulation, is kind of insane. There's another one recently where they were like, you could be like kind of like their whole pitch, like you could be laying in bed talking on a Zoom meeting, and we'll kind of real time generate an avatar of you that looks like it's sitting at its desk paying attention. And I was like, that's kind of crazy.
That's because as long as you're the one like listening and talking real time, that gets super interesting, right? Like I could be in Vegas at the casino and just take the meeting while I'm throwing dice, right? That's crazy stuff, dude. I've been building a bunch of AI demos, and I'm not going to do it, but I was looking at the APIs. I'm a Go developer by trade, so I was looking at the APIs that allowed you to connect to like one of these Google Meets and I guess integrate some of this translation and stuff. None of it looked super simple, especially when you need credentials and stuff like that. That's like anybody can build a toy app to demo something. Now you got to build it for somebody for real, right? That's a whole nother story.
Well, it's funny because yeah, I think a lot of folks look at our product and think the AI part is the hard part. It's actually the easiest part. The hard part is getting something that like reliably and at scale can record all these meetings on all these various platforms that don't really have APIs, right? Like this bot joins your meeting. There's not really an API for Google Meet to record from a third party. So we spent 2 years just working on that part, making it reliable and robust. And we kind of said like, like I said, we had two theses. AI was going to get good, and transcription was basically going to become free. And we said, if you wait till those two things are true, it'll be a very obvious thing everyone will be building, right? And so kind of start ahead of time and build the infrastructure that's actually the hard part.
Yeah, it is smart because that is the hard part. The hard part is making something at a production level scale that can handle it without it always breaking, right? Because that's the other part too. And with me playing with some of the LLMs, yeah, I mean, once you have the written text that gets, again, now it's more of a scale problem. Again, it's like how many of these can you run in parallel based on the amount of money you want to spend on compute, right?
Or in ways, a lot of it is like, how do you get, our stuff is we give you the notes within like 30 seconds to meet the ending. So unlike most users of LLMs, we have a low tolerance for like latency and like reliability. And so we actually have to kind of like duplex across multiple models and different basically providers, right? To make sure it's the only way to get, you know, LLMs have like 1/9 of reliability, maybe.
Yeah,
I think
right.
I looked at Anthropic's uptime the other day and it was like 99.4%. And I was like, in any other context for some sort of like infrastructure vendor, you'd be like, they should be out of business. But in the LLM space, that's actually pretty normal, which is kind of wild.
I help a company called Prediction Guard, which is one of these AI infrastructure companies. So we help with all the ops running these models in Kubernetes. Anytime we decide we're going to switch to a new model, we know we need like 2 weeks because we know it's not going to come up. We know it's going to be a config. Like it's insane, like the complexity. But once you get it humming, then you're like, great, but it takes a couple of weeks.
Yeah, yeah. And the EOL, the other things like the EOL cycles on these LMs is really short. So you constantly have to be kind of upgrading to the latest. You have to be tweaking your prompts and stuff like that.
How are you running your models? Are you in the cloud or did you have your own sort of
We actually
stack?
that's the only thing in our stack where we actually just use some third party API, whether it's from OpenAI or Google Gemini or Anthropic. And so we just we have a whole team that basically tests models versus use cases almost constantly. And we're constantly kind of like updating and switching which models we use, but we don't actually
So
host them in
uh,
house.
so basically as a customer, I can just say I want you to use Gemini for whatever reason and give you my creds
No,
and
actually,
or
so no, we make that decision for you. So
okay,
we
okay.
obfuscate all of that. Like we basically just say, don't worry about what's the back end. We will constantly be kind of our way our product
Ah,
is.
okay.
The whole pitch of our product is like we take care of all of, like in any given meeting that you use Fathom on, we probably will actually use multiple LLM models from different providers for different things. Oh, this one's good at finding the action items. This one's good at writing the notes. Oh, this one's good at finding the timestamps. And
Oh,
so,
that's fair.
uh,
That's fair.
so it's kind of like I call us applied AI, right? Like we're not training models. We just get to use models off the shelf and find the best model for each job that we need to do.
All right, that's fair. And on pricing wise, then you're trying to go flat fee on that and then mitigate
Yeah, so
costs.
we give the product away for free. Like most of our users are on our free product, and then once you start to use it, we have a premium version for individuals, but mostly it's like once you start to use it across your team, and you want a team repository of all your meetings that you can search and get alerts across, then great, we have a seat price that we charge. But we don't people don't like usage pricing, so we try to obfuscate, right? Like I don't want to
Hate
pay for every
usage
meeting that I'm
pricing.
in, right? They just want like give me a flat fee that I can pay for each person in my team.
Yeah, I almost never at some level care what the cost is. I just need a predictable monthly spend, right? That I can budget for. Yeah. Don't restrict me. Pricing is so hard in this space. The fact that OpenAI went with this token is even worse, right? Because a
Yeah.
token's not even a word, dude. Like, how am I supposed to calculate? Like, you can't even calculate it. It's like
It's like
insane to me.
Farmville Bucks or something. It feels like they took a page out of like one of these like, yeah, social gaming platforms. Like, oh, you're gonna spend money, but in our own currency, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, and we're gonna decide like and the token algorithm can change depending on the next model. So you're
Right.
never gonna really know what you're paying for. Like you gotta be. It's amazing. Yeah, I hate that. Hate that. Okay, so I want us to jump into the time machine and get a sense of sort of how you got here. So, a couple of quick questions we always start off with. One, what year did you graduate high school and where were you?
1999 and Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay, 99. I get that into my head. And then I want you to clear your mind for this question. Just clear it up. I want you to share with us that first memory you have of putting your hands on a keyboard and getting that computer to do something.
Jeez. Okay. I mean, it was a 286, and I think it was. I want to say there's some game I was playing, but I can't remember what it was. But I think just it was like I built my own, like with the help of my father, built my own 286, and just remember getting that thing to boot up, and then being like, "This is amazing," and then being like, "Now what do I do with it?"
What does your dad do for a living that he came home that you started building computers with him?
He had like a business that basically installed equipment in hospitals. Like, if you've ever been in a hospital, like, they got all those old buttons and pull cords on the wall. They had a business that like installed that, which is pretty random. But yeah, looking back, I was very fortunate that he like brought computers in my life at a young age, and also was totally fine with me like tearing them apart and rebuilding them, and like it's kind of an interesting era that like all the computers were very fungible in a way that devices aren't today, and so it kind of encouraged you to like, oh, well, upgrade this thing, pull this apart, understand how it works, sort of thing.
Yeah, I would back in the 90s, I'd go to work and they would buy memory for a machine and I would take the old memory and bring it home and upgrade the machine at home.
Yeah, I did the same thing. Yeah, it's like, oh, we got this excess memory. Oh, great.
So I'm gonna put as much as I can in there and I pray that it's compatible. Yeah, we did that. And then, so yeah, so this story then is probably in the early 90s if you graduated.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, 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 it's cool. What were you sort of interested in high school? Were you kind of a geek? Were you into sports? Were you music?
I was a really nerdy kid up until, well, until I realized I was a nerdy kid. Like I didn't have like I made websites. I think I made a website called PlayStation Online, which was like the number one cheat code sites for PlayStations. My best friend had the number one cheat code site for PC games. We
Wow.
made like $400 a month in ad revenue. And I remember our parents being
And
real
how old are
confused by
you? Like
this.
15, 16?
14 or 15, yeah.
So I'm not a gamer, but I just so bad at games. I didn't even play them. Again, I graduated in 87. Okay. So I'm like 10 years older, but I always wondered how you guys found these cheat codes. Was it you playing games and knowing what to do
No,
or
we just
they were
somehow we
code?
just got we I think we found some random forums online, and we just kind of almost like Wikipedia style, like we curated them together, and then we became a destination site. People just started submitting them to us, and we would just give them attribution, right? And be like, oh, you
Oh,
know, and so yeah, it just kind of took on a life of its own.
that's interesting, man. That must have been exciting when you started seeing some popularity around the site.
It was
And
super
then
fun.
people are
Yeah.
paying you. How are you getting payments?
Yeah, I think we had like we had one of the early like banner ad networks, which paid out pretty well, I think, by modern standards, right? Like people, we were kind of, I guess, a benefactor of like some of the dot com booms, just like flowing downstream to us, right? It's like, oh, these companies are investing way too much in advertising on the internet, and that flowed down to us on our lowly little cheat code
Wow.
websites, right?
And your parents were like, "What are you doing, Richard, with all this money?"
They told me afterwards they actually called my best friend, and our parents talked to her like, we're getting he's getting these checks in the mail. Like, are you getting these checks in the mail? Do we think this is legit? Are we worried about what they're doing?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Are they looking for the drugs in the bedroom, right? They're looking
yeah,
for the
yeah,
suitcase of drugs
yeah,
in the
yeah,
bedroom, except the stuff's coming in as like checks, not cash, right?
yeah, yeah. It was an interesting. I mean, I have a lot of nostalgia for it. It's funny because halfway through my high school career, I realized I wasn't cool, and I focused on being cool, and I stopped doing a lot of the nerdy things. And now I look back fondly on like the nerdy part of my high school experience, like, oh, that was actually the more interesting part. Turns out I didn't even know this, but someone pointed out to me, it's like I was in like a calculus class, and apparently I guess I wrote some software for the TI-83 that became like the standard calculus companion app for the entire school district. And like someone's like, oh, my sibling just came home from school and there's a app they get everyone to install. It says "Buy Richard White," and I don't remember writing this, but so I guess and
That's wild, dude.
I'm pretty sure in the source code there was also some like some cheat codes for the class sort of thing. But yeah.
That's wild. So you'd already kind of, by the time you're in high school, you've already had somewhat of a successful experience on the web building popular sites. But when you're gonna near like graduating high school, like what are you thinking? Uni, computer science, or like what are you thinking about as you're about to graduate?
Yeah, I mean, I feel very fortunate because I don't think most people have this experience. But it was like, I think from the time I was like 13, I was like, knew I was going to do computer science. It was just a matter of like, we're going to do computer engineering or we're going to do computer science. And where are we going to go? Like, I really wanted to go to MIT, but I kind of chickened out and didn't apply and ended up going to NC State, which is also a good computer science program, but not nearly MIT. And yeah, I think, honestly, in some ways, college was a bit of a letdown because in high school, we were we actually taught the computer science class. I remember in our senior year, they were teaching C++, and the teacher was, I think, like one of the PE teachers who like taken a course over the summer to learn how to teach C++. And in the first week, we kept telling him all the things that he was doing wrong, and he just kind of like, to his credit, he just kind of let us start teaching the class. And so like he had the
Wow.
course material, and we were busy. No, header files work like this, and da 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 da. And I remember like we had a great time teaching. I learned a lot teaching the class, and then I remember going to uni and being like, oh my gosh, I'm going to meet so many smart people that like want to learn how to program. And we got there, and it was 1999, and it was the top of the .com cycle. And I think what happened was, I think 90% of our university computer science class had never programmed before, and this kind of blew my mind. I was kind of like, wait, how have you never programmed? And to a person, they'd all be like, yeah, I don't know, I wasn't sure what I want to do with my life. And my school counselor was like, you should get into programming. It's like going to be a hot new business, a hot new career. And I was like, oh, okay. And so it was just kind of this weird experience where like, 9 out of 10 or 19 out of 20 folks didn't have that same sort of like passion for computer science that me and my buddy did. And I remember in university, we had to do like these pair programming labs, and they were always on Monday night. And so you'd have to go in and you'd be paired with some stranger, and you're supposed to basically co-program something. And I remember every time I'd be like, look, do you want to like program, or do you want me just to do this and we'll be out of here in time for Monday Night Football? Like we will be out of here in like 20 minutes. Like usually takes 2 hours. And every person took me up on that offer, right? Everyone's like, do I want to learn, or I want to let this guy just kind of like get me an A? And every
Yeah.
time I was like, I'll let this guy get me an A. And it was great. Like I was like, cool.
Yeah, as long as you didn't have to sit in front of the teacher and start getting questions,
Yeah.
then you were
Yeah.
set, man.
Right.
I had a couple of those in uni where it was a group project, but then it was like a question and answer for the group, and we wouldn't have pulled that off. But yeah, that's cool.
I had a
But
group project
I'm
too. I remember we had a senior project, and my team was really worried because like I didn't work on it all semester. And I was like, this is so easy. And I just did it the night before it was due. And they were all freaked out. They're like, I can't believe you're waiting. I was like, this is a 2 hour project. I do this all the time. So it was very funny experience where I would think there's just two very parallel universes of
but
people in uni.
but you didn't find any of the classes computer science wise challenging at
There
uni?
were a few that are hard. Like assembly, to this day haunts me, right? Like writing assembly code is just, machine code, horrifying. Like not, I'm better at
But
the top of the stack, but yeah.
but I remember having OS level classes where you had to kind of build your own OS and load up like that stuff you couldn't do in a couple hours, man. That
No.
stuff
Yeah,
was
yeah. There's
that
stuff
stuff
that was
required
hard.
some trial and error.
Yeah, yeah. No, there. I mean, I
So
think I actually failed intro to C++ or something. I remember like there was so like a random story, but yeah, there were some classes that were very hard. But a lot of it actually, I think I learned most of what I knew about programming from was building. I actually was building my own software company on the side while I was in uni, and I think I learned probably 80% of what I used for that because I wasn't like a hardcore computer scientist. I wasn't out there trying to write my own OS. I was mostly out there trying to make web apps and stuff like this, right? I
how are
exist at the
you
top of the OSI stack.
how are you okay, so you're in uni, you're taking these classes. Where's the work coming from? Are you out soliciting or it's just coming to
No, I
you?
was just building stuff. Like I said, my father had this company that sold equipment to hospitals, and one of the things that they sold was a VCR controller. And so if you ever go to a hospital, they have like these internal, almost like these like educational channels, right? Like, oh, channel 11 is all about diabetes. Channel 13 is all about, what to do with your newborn. And all of those channels were like, in the back, there's a bank of 50 VCRs, and there's a thing that tells each VCR play, rewind, like orchestrates it all. And I remember thinking how insane that was. We should just digitize all those tapes, and then you could just
Wow.
have one little computer that runs it all. And so that was my side project in college, was like build out a company that basically just made this kind of like, video player software. I think it's gotten sold in a grand total of one hospital ever. Uh, and it's not my finest piece of code by far. But it was a fun, like, side project to really kind of have something to test all this, apply all
Yeah,
the
but
stuff that
that's
you're learning in
still sort
class.
of new tech. That stuff hadn't
Yeah.
been solidified like it is today. Video
Yeah.
players, digit conversioning. Like I remember doing some of that stuff in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it wasn't trivial. Just right, it
No, it was
wasn't
a ton
mature
of
yet.
work. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah,
a ton
yeah,
of
yeah.
work. The video codecs were pretty new and like raw. You had to have a whole digitizing process, and yeah, yeah,
And
it was
compression
fun.
too, because somebody gave you one of those really large
Right, they're
raw
huge.
video files. What are you
Yeah,
going to do with it? You couldn't
right,
really.
right.
Yeah, it's just
Especially
even
relative
that
to
alone.
storage size at the time. Yeah, yeah.
That's wild. So at some point, you're going to graduate university, right? Or you just decide to quit because I don't need this shit anymore.
I actually graduated. Yeah, no, no.
Okay.
I was like, I was like, this is easy enough. We might as well. We were here. We might as well do it. I think I only went to like 10% of my classes, but I did graduate.
And what was the idea? No more school. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. We're going to do something.
Actually, it was I was just gonna get a job. I actually did like I was so entrepreneurial growing up. Like I remember I sold like pictures to kids in first grade, and like high school I did the website. I also sold fake Oakleys to kids in high school too, and like I had nothing but side hustles. And then I did this software company in college, and like none of them really went anywhere. And I think growing up in North Carolina, it wasn't super entrepreneurial. Like it wasn't. I kept trying to find friends that would work on these projects with me, and maybe they'd work on it with me for a little bit, but then they go get a job at IBM and make, good money. And so then they kind of stop working with me. And so at some point I kind of gave in. I was like, oh, I guess I should go get a programming job. And so I actually, after college, spent 2 years just doing a standard like dev shop programming job. I was terrible. I was a terrible employee. And so I was very fortunate that I like found this startup and worked my way into working in the startup that was in the first batch of Y Combinator and got me back in entrepreneurship. But yeah, no, I was very much going to be I was going to buy a house in North Carolina. I was going to get a normal day to day software development job. That was going to be my life.
Yeah, except I think you can't really take or when somebody asks you to do something, you know it's wrong. I don't think you can just say, okay.
That's why I was a bad
That's
employee. I was like, you had to, if I didn't understand why I was doing the thing, I wouldn't do it. Like, I'm like,
you
that's
can't be a contractor either because the contractor
right.
mentality is you're paying me. You want me to do that? No problem, dude. You're paying me for it. I mean, I'll just be fixing it again in 3 weeks, but no problem.
Yeah, I had amazingly patient first two bosses that I'm very grateful for because I would now being in management myself, I don't know that I could have put up with me. I was very, very
But that's
headstrong and
hard.
yeah,
I was 12 years ago very much like that. And I have a consulting service business, and my business partner had to teach me to just like, and every once in a while he still says, Bill, stop. That's what they want to do. Just do it. Right. And every neuron in your brain is exploding because you
yeah.
just know like this is like just not good. So what's going on with the startup? So you do this for 2 years and then this startup sort of comes across your desk. How does that enter into your path?
Yeah, I was, I think this time I was itching to build stuff on the side and like we were doing very uninteresting software at my day job. Like it was like software for people that audit grocery stores sort of thing. It was like the least sexy thing you can imagine. And this was around the time where Gmail came out. And I think it was really exciting that like, oh, basically it's like we're moving desktop paradigms onto web pages, right? And someone had been building web apps for a while. And so I really wanted to build, it's not a very unique idea, but I wanted to build basically the calendar version of Gmail, right? Like, oh, Gmail is really cool. Why don't we have a calendar version of Gmail? And I remember talking to my colleagues a lot about doing this and like, we should do this in house, blah, blah. And then my buddy came by one day and he's like, sent me a link to a TechCrunch article. He's like, oh, bad news. Someone already built it. And he sent me a link to this website. called Kiko.com. And I went and looked at it, and it was really impressive technically. Like it did things back then that you didn't do, like right click context menus and like a web page and drag and drop and blah, blah. And I remember looking at this and being like, wow, damn, someone did it. And then I looked at it further and I was like, yeah, but this is really ugly. Like the design was horrendous. Like technically really impressive. Design was horrendous.
Functional, but not
Functional,
really.
yeah. But like,
Yeah.
but like really low affordances. You didn't know you could do all like it, you had to really explore it to find all these like features that blew my mind. And so I just wrote these guys an email. I don't know, I found their email and I wrote them an email and said like, your product is technically really impressive. I think the design is, I don't remember what I said, but I don't think it was super kind. Like design is pretty bad. And actually at this point in my career, I wanted to actually become a designer, and a product designer, UI design. And I was like, I can help you fix it though. So I kind of like threw their thing under the bus, said it's a piece of crap, but I was like, I will help you fix it.
Wow.
And then I started kind of like consulting with them like for free. I was like, I'll help you for free. I sent them a bunch of sketches, like really hand drawn sketches of how the UI I thought could work. And they told me later they didn't understand any of the sketches. But at some point, I sent them an actual like front end prototype in like HTML, CSS, and they're like, "Oh, that's really good. Do you want to come work with us full time?" And so I agreed and started working with going up to Boston half the month and working with them. And the two guys that started Kiko, this is a kind of a trivia question, are Justin Kahn and Emmett Shear, who after we sold Kiko, went on to start Twitch, or at the time it was
Wow.
Justin TV. And so crazy kind of sliding doors moment in my life where I kind of like cold emailed these guys, told their product, their baby was ugly, started working with them, and then kind of got into the slipstream of great entrepreneurs because we were working out of the Y Combinator office at the time, which was in Cambridge. And it was like those two guys plus Steve Huffman, Alexis Ohanian that were starting Reddit on the other side of the room. And just like everyone in that cohort went on to be a really stellar kind of software developer or like entrepreneur. And that really, those are also my best friends today. And like, you know, for 20, almost going on 20 years, got me into this really great group of entrepreneurs that all moved out to California and started amazing businesses during kind of the lull after the dot-com bust.
Wow, man. Like you found yourself in the middle of a whole class of people that were changing the world there.
It was amazing. Yeah, like I was there at the beginning of Reddit. I think I'm user ID 9 in Dropbox. Drew was a good friend. I remember the first version of Dropbox. Like looking back, I just think about how fortunate I was. It was crazy. It was just a bunch of, you know, there's an apartment building full of probably 40 people just building software companies in the late 2000s. And almost 50% of them went on to become something you would have heard of, right? Which is an insane hit rate. So
But okay, so this is all happening in like the decade of the 2000s, right? So just hearing all that part of your story, like tell me about from like 2010 to now like 2020. What are you doing in that sort of time span that gets you into an AI sort of mind frame?
Here at Ardan Labs, we believe in empowering companies to reach their full potential through innovative technology solutions. Trusted by small startups and Fortune 500 companies alike, we specialize in high-performance software consulting, training, staffing, development, and now AI. With over 14 years of experience, Ardan Labs has trained over 30,000 engineers and served over 1,000 companies worldwide. Whether you're mastering Go, Rust, Kubernetes, Terraform, or blockchain, we're your strategic partner for performance-grade solutions. Let's elevate your tech journey together. Reach out to Ardan Labs today.
2000 were kind of like this lost decade too, right? From like an engineering perspective, like it was kind of crazy. I remember when I graduated, the class two before us had like a 90% higher rate. Our class was 2003, so it was after the bust, had like 10% higher rate. And so I think it was actually the 2000s were a great time to actually be building stuff because there wasn't really a lot of jobs to go do. And then, you know, I came out to California after working on Kiko with Justin Emmett. Ended up not going anywhere. We ended up selling the company on eBay, not to eBay, but on eBay. So sold the company on eBay, sold for $250,000. It was like this whole story where people were making fun of us. And then by the end of the week, at the end of the auction, they were asking like, is this the future of M&A? And we're like, no, this is just like a crazy idea Justin had. but that got me a lot of visibility for my work because the design was a lot better in the version we eventually sold. I did freelancing for a couple of years, design freelancing. I moved out to California. And then one of the problems I had on Kiko was it was three of us, and we had, thousands of users. And as the design guy, I was constantly fielding all the feedback because I wanted to figure out how this could be better. And I remember, the most painful arguments I had at Kiko were us arguing about user feedback and like, what do users really want? And what are they actually saying? And, can we ask them follow-up questions about like their time zone needs and stuff like this? And so I started this company called User Voice, which is basically Reddit for customer feedback. It was like, let's just like crowdsource this and let people submit feedback and vote about the people feedback. So I don't have to spend all day reading feedback and trying to collate it. Users will just do it for us. And I ran that company for about 12 years, actually. I was there for a long time. We got to about 10 million revenue. It was a very kind of long, slow slog.
How were people, how were you generating revenue from that? A subscription?
Subscription. Yeah. So we were charging,
Wow.
you were charging businesses that wanted to collect feedback. And in the beginning, it was like small startups and it was like $90 a month. And near the end, it was like Netflix and Meta and Microsoft. And it was very much like an enterprise company. And so it wasn't, in a lot of ways, it wasn't a super successful company. It's still running. It's doing decently well. But it was a company I learned a lot at because did it for 12 years. We did every go-to-market model you can imagine. And I kind of noticed that like a lot of my friends that succeeded, they were just like right product at the right time. Their execution didn't really matter. Like they didn't, they couldn't even tell you like why our sales motion worked or whatnot. And so I learned a lot from User Voice because for us to make the revenue number go up, we had to execute really, really well. And so it taught me a lot about go-to-market models. I had to run, various points every team. I ran the sales team for a year, I ran the marketing team for a year, I ran the CS team for a year in between kind of managers and executives. And so as much as it didn't necessarily enrich me financially, it gave me this really, I called it my finishing school for startups, right? Where now I'm a very good T-shaped founder where I'm dangerous enough to be ahead of marketing, ahead of sales, whatnot, and at least a B- version of all those things, which is super helpful if you want to go start a company. So yeah, did that for 12 years and then left to go start Fathom in 2020.
Yeah. So how does the AI sort of, I get what you're doing, right? But you have to wake up one morning and go, you know what? There's a whole world here that we're missing out on. So like, because it seems to me you keep coming up with these great ideas for products, you're executing them. People are giving you dollars for them, even if it's not as many dollars as you want, right? There are people on this planet who can't even do what you've done 3 or 4 times once. Okay. Like it's not easy to think of a product, build it, get somebody to pay you $1 and even sustain that for several years, right? Like, and you've done it several times already. And now you're like, okay, we're going to do it again. Like, I'm not tired. We're going to do it again.
Well, so yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because so every year at User Voice, I ask myself 2 questions. One, am I uniquely qualified to run this company? And 2, am I learning something unique that I can only learn at this company? And in 2019, for the first time, I said no to both of those questions. And I was like, okay, I think it's time for me to move on. I've kind of, I've exhausted all the things I think I can do with this vehicle and started trying to figure out new things I could build. And it's funny because my friends were all like, at this point, I'd kind of missed out on the biggest boom decade in tech, right? All my other friends had grown companies. In the time I was a user was 12 years. Most of my friends had done at least 2 companies, maybe 3 or 4, right? And had 1 or 2 exits and whatnot. In some ways, I was a little like, oh shit, I sat on the sidelines to a certain degree during this biggest boom cycle. And it was funny because when I said I'm going to start a new company, all my friends were like, I can't imagine starting another company. That sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
And
I'm
now that
thinking the
Fathom's
same
really
thing.
and now that Fathom's really taken off, I kind of get it. To be honest, I think User Voice, because it wasn't super successful, was a slightly less stressful pace because like there weren't things flying at us. Like we were having to work to push them, and we worked a lot. But I think now, I get it. Like when you hit something that has hyper growth, like we've hit with Fathom, it's a whole different level of like work and workload. But luckily for me, I was kind of ignorant to that, and so I was like, yeah, let's go do another startup. Frankly, it's been super fun because in a lot of ways, I call Fathom. As mentioned, I'm kind of a big gamer. In gaming community, they've got like speed runners where they try to basically beat a video game as fast as possible. And I feel like Fathom really is my second serious startup with like serious funding. and I'm like speed running what I did before. And so I'm just trying, how do we do everything we did at User Voice and then some? And then how do we do it in half the time or a quarter of the time? It's been really fun. I was like, you know, I was using an analogy to like Minecraft, where it's like, if you play Minecraft for the first time, you get dropped in this open world and there's like, you're not sure what the rules are. You don't know what to do. It takes you half an hour to figure out. You gotta like punch a tree to get some wood. It's very unintuitive. It's like User Voice. It's like my first real funded startup where it's like, I didn't know, everything felt like an essay question, right? What are we going to do for marketing? I don't know. And with Fathom, I had enough experience with User Voice where everything felt like a multiple choice question. And, you know, now I'm playing Minecraft, but within the first 2 hours, I've got a castle with a moat and, you know, I've got all the things, right? And it's just been super, super gratifying to kind of play the startup video game again. But now you know what you're doing, right? To a certain degree.
Yeah, the theme in almost every show that I do here is ignorance is bliss. Like people do things because they're ignorant, and when they look back, they're like, "I would never do that again." But I
Right.
only did it because I didn't know any better. But look where it
Right.
got me, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a
But
lot of that.
you're still not sharing with me how AI gets on your radar screen because you're building this product, right? But you haven't told me where the idea came from. How did you know there was a need for this at the end of the day?
So near the end of my tenure at User Voice, I was doing product research for other products we could build at that company because I was kind of like, I should go back to, I'm better at building new products than trying to improve this existing one that's been in the market for 10 years and is very kind of solidified at this point. And so early 2020, I was just doing a lot of Zoom meetings with doing user research. And I think I was doing 15 to 20 Zoom meetings a day. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, you stub your toe against something once a month, you don't do anything about it. You stub your toe against something like 5 times a day, you're going to go fix that thing, right? And so I remember we were doing research for a different product. It's like, oh, the product's getting some good reviews, but you know what I really hate doing? I hate this. Like, I'm so stressed out talking to these people for 15 minutes at a time, hurriedly typing notes, cleaning them up, trying to clean them up so they make sense before the next meeting I get on. And then looking at those notes 2 weeks later and being like, I don't remember which meeting this was. And if I try to share this with my team, they like, it's lost like 90%. You know, I'd have this amazing conversation with you and you tell me some really interesting insights about the product I'm working on. And then 2 weeks later, I try to synthesize that for my team and I get some like very vanilla bullet points. It's lost all of its meaning. And so that was a point where I was like, gosh, there's got to be a better way to do this. Why don't we have the tech to like record these things and transcribe it and like take the notes for me or at least find the right moments? And the answer was like, we kind of do, but it was really expensive at that time. I kind of looked at it and it's like, you know, gosh, transcriptions are expensive. It's like $3 an hour. No wonder these companies are charging $200 a month for a product to do transcription, record all your meetings. But I've tried all four of the main providers and they're all pretty good. I think this is a commodity. So I think this is going to get really cheap. And I don't know how I knew about AI. I think it's because I was so plugged into a bunch of other entrepreneurs, right? And they were all just very bullish that AI was going to get really good. And so I just was like, oh, okay. Like it seems like a commonly held belief amongst all of my much smarter and much more successful group of friends than me that like AI is coming, right? And they knew people that were working at Anthropic and OpenAI and stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, well, transcription costs going to zero. AI is going to get better. Great, we could have something that just takes notes for me on every meeting. And that feels like a huge market because I haven't met anyone who likes trying to talk to someone and take notes at the same time. And so that's kind of the genesis for how we started Fathom.
No, I'm kind of going through some of this right now that I'm talking about you, thinking about it, because I've been interviewing way too many people over the last few weeks to fill some heads, right? And then like a week goes by and another position opens up and I'm like, man, I remember talking to somebody last week that I really liked. And now I'm searching through Slack messages and emails and calendar trying to find this. And my brain's just going, Bill, you were so disorganized. But, you know, I'm talking to these people on Google Meet. Like if I had a transcription of every single conversation I had and I could organize that, that would probably solve most of my problems.
It's you know, what's been fun about this product too is it's a product. I like working on things that solve a problem I have. And, you know, Fathom was even from our earliest, crappiest version, it changed the way I worked because it solved problems like what you just described, right? And it was just kind of like, oh my gosh, I couldn't go back to not having this data, right? Like not having the ability to, like, I've had this before. I'm like on a call, I'm like, someone mentioned to me something similar to this, and I just go into Fathom search and I'm like, oh, here it is. Like, like I don't even try to retain things anymore. I just know that this is like my second brain that has access to these things whenever I need it.
How are you doing search in Phantom? Because it's one thing to translate everything, and then it's another thing to index something for search. So like, what is your strategy there?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. We're rolling actually a whole new strategy for search out, which is more of like a semantic search using AI. So to date, we have a lot of it's basically just like, as you might imagine, we're taking the entire transcripts, we're annotating them with who that we met with, but then we're just doing standard kind of keyword search type stuff or phrase search. What we're moving to now, or actually beta testing, which is really cool, is actually like, no, imagine an AI going out and reading all of your meetings and finding like, you're like, instead of saying like, oh, when did this word come up? I'm just saying, when was there any time where someone gave me kind of a negative reaction to our pricing, right? For example, oh, great. Yeah, they can find that. So um, it's probably the thing I'm most excited about. It's like, because it's going to unlock a whole another set of use cases that I can use it for.
Yeah, I mean, because there's really two different types of search, right? There is the need for a traditional Google index sort of,
Find me the
right?
specific thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's the same thing with AI for me, right? Like there are problems you can solve using inference and that stuff, but I think you still need to write some traditional algorithms that even sit on that at some point, right? Like the LLM isn't doing everything; it's doing a lot.
I mean, it's
But
a lot of how you use it. I think it's funny. We get a lot of requests. People are constantly like, "Oh, can I'm really excited you saw that. I'm going to export all my transcripts into ChatGPT and then just ask questions of it." I'm like, it doesn't actually work. Like, you can't just give it 10,000 hours of content and it just understand it. Maybe one day that'll be true, but today it's not. And so you have to get pretty clever of like, how do you reduce? It's almost like a map reduce type function in a lot of ways. So it's like, okay, how do you reduce all these transcripts down to the core atoms? And then how do you search? How do you have the AI search across that? It's really exciting. It's a completely different way of building out search than we historically do it, right?
yeah, the vector databases and cosine
Yep.
similarities,
Yep.
right? And at the end of the day, what I've learned, at least over the last year, is those systems are only as good as you're able to chunk the data with some sort of contents or right. Too big, not good. Too small, not good. Not relatable enough.
I mean, this is kind of like, so, like I said, my background is programming, but then design. And so I hear a lot about user experience. The world of AI development is so different than traditional development, right? Traditional development was like, it's hard to get the thing to work, but once you get it to work, you're kind of good. With AI, it's really good to get the AI to say something. It's really hard to get to say the right thing. And we're now in this thing where we're trying to actually measure the quality of the output, right? Whereas before you could just write unit tests, like, did it do the thing? I click this button and then this wheel should spin type of thing, right? It was more like mechanical engineering in software. Now it's like art, where it's like, oh, it spits out a thing. Is this thing good? Could it be better? It breaks all of your QA processes. It breaks all of your testing processes. And so, you know, it's easy, it's easy to make a hello world app, right? That does something, that spits out something in AI. It's really hard to make it work at scale, make it work reliably, and make it actually the highest quality output it can be. It's kind of a fun challenge. It's very R&D in a way that I don't think I've ever seen in my career.
So I have like a demo website that I built. So as I play with AI to show people what we can do. So I built a Connect 4 game, right? Where the LLMs are involved. And Prediction Guard was talking about getting rid of one of the models. And I was like freaking out. I'm like, I got my prompt working perfectly with this model. You don't know how many hours that took. Don't get rid of the model. I need time. Right. And then that was bothering the hell out of me because I know if they change that model, I have to go back now and do a bunch of work to get it. And maybe it does better, right? Maybe, but it's working really good right now. I don't need better. And I'm like, please don't do that.
Well, and that's funny too. It's like, yeah, historically, some upgrade to some, I don't know, library or core system just adds new functionality and basically like it's backwards compatible. None of these models are backwards compatible. And as I mentioned, the EOL cycles on them are super short, right? Like we see this with all vendors where it's like they put out a model and within a year, there's new models in there basically starving the old models of compute resources, of inference resources. And so like it's a real kind of treadmill you get on really quickly if you run AI products.
It's going to get expensive because you're going to have customers on those models who, there's customers that never upgrade. And so they're going to tell you, you have to spend money on compute for this. And you, right now you're spending more money as an infrastructure company because you're not allowed to, because somebody pays you, you're not allowed to get rid of that. You can't free up that card. Sorry.
Yep. Yep.
Oh my God. It's like, it's crazy what's happening right now. I think even just from infrastructure, it's going to be fun. Dude, I'm like 55. I really want to be done in like 4 years, man.
I mean,
I'm tired, dude.
I think, 2 years ago when all the AI stuff started really picking up, on one hand, I was like, great, this is the future we were building this company for, right? Like, we kind of predicted this. And then we're recently, I'm like, oh man, this rate of change is like even greater than I would have guessed. Like, it's one of the rare times where I think things are happening faster than even most people predict. And, for 20 years, I've been able to fall back on this, like, oh, I know how to build software. At minimum, there's always going to be a market for people that know how to build software. And now I'm like, oh, I don't know. 5 years from now, is there going to be a market for people that know how to build software? Or is the AI just going to do it for us? I don't know. Like, I don't even know what I'd do if it was 20 years ago and I was like starting off my career, because there's just so much volatility there. Obviously, you want to build an AI space, but who knows if you're going to get replaced by an LM yourself in a few years.
My big concern there is maintainability and debugability. It's one thing to ask an AI to build out a bunch of code and it works. But how good is it making tweaks and fixing the bug? And like I don't know enough yet. And that scares me in terms of just using it to generate everything.
Yeah. I'm actually in some ways hoping for like I think most folks I know are 50-50 divided on like, we will continue on this like acceleration curve of AI, or like we're about to hit a plateau of what you can do with kind of the existing transformer approach. I'm kind of hoping for the latter. If we could all use a breather and like, assimilate the tech that we have, I think if it keeps going exponential, we're at the singularity by the end of this decade. And I don't know if we're ready for that. So.
All right. Well, I had a scheduling mistake with Richard and we are out of time because he has a hard stop, right? In like 4 minutes. So Richard, if anybody wanted to reach out after listening to this and had some questions, we'll put it in the show notes. What's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, the only social media I do is LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn. I've got a little bitmap emoji avatar, Richard White, Fathom. That's me. Send me a message there. I'll probably get back to you within a couple of days. But yeah, would always happy to connect with folks. As you heard from my story, a lot of the key things happen in my life because someone answered a cold message of mine. So I always try to pay it forward and be helpful if I can.
I had a business part one time that it said to me, like, why do you take that call? Why are you spending time talking to that person? Because you never know who you're talking to. That's why.
Exactly. This is probably my favorite thing about, I think, the tech industry. At least this is like the SF Silicon Valley ethos that I really believe in. Everyone goes out of their way to help people, even when there's like seemingly nothing in it for them, right? And like I think in some places, maybe you're in finance or whatnot, it's all about how much you make and whatnot. In tech, I feel like it's how helpful you are and how well connected you are. And I really I love that about our community. So.
And the people who share their network with others, I think is huge.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
You could be selfish too with that. All right. Well, this is the Ardan Labs podcast signing off with Richard White and Bill Kennedy. And we hope to see everybody again real soon.